The Russian military lacks enough troops for a major breakthrough in Ukraine despite recent battlefield gains. That is what US commanders, actually one of the biggest and largest top commander in Europe, is stating right now. We're going to watch his interview and break down his comments and other things because we're seeing a major turn in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Of course, all in Ukraine's favor. This video I'm going to play for you in a second is from US General Christopher Cavoli, and I hope I'm saying that right. I apologize if I'm not. He was speaking in talks last Thursday about what Russia is capable of doing. And in it, well, listen to his comments.
No, the Russians don't have the numbers necessary to do a strategic breakthrough. We don't believe. More to the point, they don't have the skill and the capability to do it, to operate at the scale necessary to exploit any breakthrough to strategic advantage. They do have the ability to make local advances, and they have done some of that. They've also made some local losses. So, I'm in very close contact with our Ukrainian colleagues, and I'm confident that they will hold the line.
Essentially, what he is saying is this. Russia doesn't have enough manpower to do what they want to do. The men that they currently have are not trained enough or not high enough quality to be on the front lines pushing forward, which means that Russia will not be able to do any kind of breakthrough. And he is not wrong. If we look at the numbers, the average last week was that Russia was losing about 1,250 men per day. That number has slightly fallen. I would say we're probably around 1,200. Yesterday we're looking at 1,200 and I want to say like 10, while the day before was 1,150. So it is fluctuating quite a bit depending on the day, but we are seeing those bigger numbers because Russia is putting people on the front lines that have no experience whatsoever, essentially putting through what we call the meat grinder, hoping that if they overload the front lines with enough men at once, that they could stop them. But their problem, at least Russia's problem, is the fact that that would have worked about 2 months ago when Ukraine didn't have the supply chain that they currently have now. When Russia advanced outside of Avdiivka, it was because they were running out of shells. They were running out of ammunition. And so Ukrainians had to make the decision of like, look, we could probably stay here and push the Russians back, but we're going to lose men because there's going to be more hand-to-hand combat versus us having the equipment we need and firing how many kilometers away, not kilometers, I'm sorry, yards away. Now that Ukraine has everything that they need, they're able to push the Russians back. And we're seeing that in Kharkiv. And even though Russia may be getting some kind of, advance in Donbass, we're not really seeing a massive push. Now, I have to say one thing. Cavoli here talks about how Ukraine should be able to hold the line when it comes to Russia. And that is great news. That means that Ukraine is able to keep Russia in line in order for them to not move forward. But that means Ukrainians aren't pushing back. What gives? Why is it that they're not pushing forward? And a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact that we're waiting for F-16s. If you notice that in the past 3-4 weeks, we've seen a lot of air defense systems, be deleted, as they say. A lot of them in Crimea, some of them towards Mariupol, other ones towards north of Kharkiv. And Ukraine needs to get rid of these because essentially those protect the Russian aircraft from firing on Ukrainian positions and would also fire upon Ukrainian aircraft. So if those are out of commission, then Ukraine's going to be able to get air superiority, which means that when it comes time to get F-16s, and Ukrainian troops are waiting there, essentially, those aircraft are going to lay bombs right in front. Then once they go off, Ukrainians can follow through on the ground. So they're going to be switching from a ground support to air support, which will allow them to push forward. Now, I've read a couple articles online saying that F-16s really won't change the outcome of the war, and I don't agree. I definitely think that they're going to be changing, maybe not in a dramatic way, like they're going to get them and they're going to win, I think it's going to be still several months of heavy fighting until Ukrainians finally have a system down on do this and then we can do this. You do this and you do that. But while that's going on, there's one crucial thing that's still needed, and that is long-range missiles and the permission to use those missiles inside of Russia. We know, at least according today from some kind of Italian newspaper, that Italy is getting ready to put together a 9th military package for Ukraine. In that package will be air defense systems, which is the SEMP-T, and then they're going to get Storm Shadows. How many? We don't know. But if it is true, this would be the 4th country that is giving some kind of long-range or medium-range missiles to Ukraine. That is what? France, the UK, the United States, and then Italy. With the introduction of these missiles, Ukraine's going to be able to destroy more of the Russian air defenses, though it does need to be stated that Italy has been very conservative when it comes to how Ukraine can use their weapons. As you know, other countries have already said to Ukraine, hey, you could use these against Russian targets outside of the Ukrainian border as long as it's only within this X amount of area. Or if it's a Russian plane coming in, you can kind of shoot something at it. There's a lot of rules. Italy, on the other hand, says, no, it's staying within the Ukrainian border. At least that's what they said in the past. So when it comes to this new military package, which could be coming sometime in late June, we're hoping that they're going to say, hey, you can go ahead and use these in other areas. Because let's be honest, we're at a point in this war where Ukraine has been destroying so much Russian air defenses that I really don't think Russia has many. Maybe besides the S-500 or part of it, which is, I guess, still in Moscow, but also heading towards Crimea. Outside of that, and a couple dozen, S-300s, S-400s Russia has in other places, in these high popularity places or with a large population. Russia really doesn't have air defenses outside of their oil depots, their military fields, their airports, and things like that. And so Ukraine really needs to destroy, where the F-30 or where the Su-34s are taking off from, or the Su-57s. Let's destroy, whether it be the buildings they're housed in, the runways. If we can destroy that, that will hinder Russia to the point to where they don't have air superiority, and then Ukraine can continue to push forward. I think for F-16s, at least the purpose of them, besides taking down Russian aircraft, it should be allowed to go into Russian airspace, take down those targets, so that way we can stop the Russians from attacking into Ukraine. Because remember, they launched these things and fire them from like the sea, or what is it? I think it's from the Caspian Sea, yeah. And so you have to say to yourself that Ukraine should be able to take down those aircraft, even though they're that far away. Sure, there's going to be a lot of complications, a lot of air defenses and things like that. But if we take down those air defenses, those aircraft are flying with no protection whatsoever, then yeah, we could take them down. And if we take down enough of them, it would be enough to pressure Russia into stopping their invasion of Ukraine and finally sit down for negotiations, which Ukraine has their own 10-step program that Zelensky introduced. And as you know, 80-plus countries and organizations already signed to it, hoping that they all go and work on their own individual projects, come back in X amount of months, and they could sign it and let Russia actually be there to sign it and end Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That being said, have you seen where Putin is today? He is in North Korea. And you're probably saying to yourself, North Korea? Yeah. In our list that we talked about on TikTok just today, we mentioned all the great things Putin has done. And one of them is that he's became best friends with great countries and organizations like North Korea, the Taliban, Hamas, and Iran. That being said, he is in North Korea today to sign a strategic partnership agreement. Because, you want to be best friends with all the other terrorists in the world, so you can kind of all hang out in the corner and be bullies together. During his meeting, which, by the way, I didn't know this. This was Putin's first visit to North Korea in 24 years. Okay, this is a big deal. While he was there, he praised North Korea and then thanked them for helping him in his full-scale war against Ukraine. It's no secret that North Korea is selling weapons to Russia. Heck, we just found out a few days ago that North Korea sold roughly about 5 million artillery shells to Russia. and some ballistic missiles, some of which we know can be tracked, can be taken down, and just don't fire whatsoever, which once again, if Russia wants to buy equipment from North Korea that doesn't work and spend that money, then I think that might be a win-win. Except for the fact that North Korea is getting some kind of money and then we don't know what they do with that money. But anytime that Russia can waste money, I think it's a good thing, right? They're not getting their money's worth, and essentially Russia doesn't get good equipment, which means they can't use it, and maybe that stuff gets to the front lines, and then from there, they try to use it, it doesn't go off, and then they're stuck. And then Ukrainians just kind of mow them over, as you could potentially say. When it comes to North Korea and Russia, we know that Putin is signing this brand new agreement in which they're going to be developing some kind of trade and payment system. According to the Russian news agency TASS, it says, quote, a payment system that, quote, are not controlled by the West and would jointly oppose sanctions against them. Okay, so you want to come up with a payment system between you and North Korea. I'm assuming it's because the only other payment system you have right now is the one with China, and maybe you're worried that you don't want to be just dependent on China in the future. But I don't think a North Korean government partnership is the best for Russia. Am I kind of right? I mean, once again, they have put themselves together with all the other terrorist organizations in the world, so I guess in a way it makes sense. It's just, why? Well, I don't, what goes through that guy's head? Hey, we're already terrorists, let's just go ahead and put ourselves with other terrorists. Speaking about friends, we do know that Russia is definitely doing a lot of deals with China. And in an interview today, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated that China needs to stop. Which, I mean, right now we do have an issue with China giving things to Russia, and even though China has said over and over again that they're not providing Russia with any weapons in their war, they're providing parts for weapons in the war. Let's be honest, there's a lot of things that China is able to provide to Russia, which, you know, it's like saying, I'm going to give you this watch, but I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to take it apart and just give you all the parts for it. So I'm not giving you the watch. I'm just giving you the parts to watches. And then if you know how to build those things because we sent people over there to teach you how to do it, then that's on you. That's on you. And that's what Blinken is saying here. He says that China was providing support that enables Russia to keep that defense industrial base going, to keep the war machine going, to keep the war going. And that, quote, it has to stop. Now, we do have new sanctions on China, and I don't know what other sanctions would be needed to stop China fully, but we're at the point in this war where many countries are not really caring what needs to be done, but it needs to be done. For example, let's look at what Poland's Duda said in a conference just yesterday.
Skoro Putin chce, żeby rosyjscy żołnierze ginęli na Ukrainie masowo, to trzeba czynić wszystko, żeby te oczekiwania pana Putina zostały spełnione.
He says, since Putin wants Russian soldiers to die in Ukraine in huge numbers, then we will grant him that wish, or as he says, we'll ensure that Mr. Putin's expectations are met. Which means I think we're at a point to where European countries and the United States, we're all getting tired of Russia. This reminds us all of Russia from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it just needs to end. I think we're in 2024. This Soviet world that Putin has stuck in his head that he still wants doesn't compute in this world. And I think that, I don't know what other sanctions that the United States can do or what other countries can do to put pressure on Russia, but we need to make sure that this happens. And I know what you're probably saying. It's gas and oil, and Ukraine is doing that, and, you know, there's still third parties buying stuff, and that's true as well. But there needs to be something else. Now, we know that there had been some kind of agreements taken upon themselves in the summit that just happened in Switzerland, the Ukrainian Peace Summit. We don't know what those are. We know there are projects ongoing and things that other countries are working on, and then in a few months they'll come back to see where they're at, what the progress is, and if they completed it. And we're hoping that there's some things that we don't know about that are going to be taken care of, which will put even more pressure on the Russians down the line. All that being said, we're seeing a major change in what's happening in the war in Ukraine that Russia started, Russia's invasion. We're seeing more countries come together and push extremely hard to shut down anything that Russia is trying to do. Whether it's sanctions, whether it's more storm shadows, whether it's more equipment, whether it's F-16 trainings, whether it is hopefully getting more F-16 pilots ready to go, because let's be honest, we're in a situation where we might have more aircraft than pilots because some countries, US, are not really expanding on their trainings, which they should. Not saying that like we're not doing enough, but it's like, I think they capped themselves like at 10. And Ukraine's like, can we just have like 4 or 5 more? And the US like, well, no other country says they can. So no, allow them all to do it. That being said, I want to know your thoughts behind everything. I know this was kind of like a ranty kind of video. There's just a lot that happened today, and I think countries are just getting tired. Not tired of this prolonging itself on the end, but tired in the sense that they just want Russia to completely stop. They're tired of Putin making these peace talks with, North Korea. That's not a thing. Like, who would think that 3 years ago we'd be saying, oh, hey, yeah, we have China working with Russia and North Korea, also working with Iran, and has been backing Hamas. Like that doesn't seem like that would have been a conversation we'd be having, 3 years ago. Granted, we know that in 2014, Russia was still kind of working with China in some things, but everyone else, it's like, dude, that's the terrorist club. I mean, I still can't even believe that that's a thing. But once again, let me know what you think in the comment section below, and be sure to follow me for more.